was really their hope. Fittipaldi was having problems throughout the weekend. As Derek just mentioned, he was locked in a battle for 9 and not moving forward at all. And now suddenly Tracy is struck with this. Maybe if he can get it back, they'll be able to repair it. It might just be an electronic box change, but it's going to take him a long time to get there, even if they can do it.
Yeah, and for the championship fight, he has to beat Mansell, and he really needs to finish first or second. That's over with for today. So as Tracy's problems become bigger and bigger, it actually begins to make Mansell's job of winning the championship easier and easier.
And Tracy has stopped on the course. That brings out a full course yellow because it's such a precarious position. They'll get Tracy off the course, back to the pits. Maybe the full course will actually go to his advantage, but Bobby Rahal takes advantage of the yellow on lap 23 very early in the window to come in and take on fuel, as does Al Unser Jr. Here's Gary Gerald.
This was the best qualifying effort of the year for Bobby Rahal. They liked the setup that they had in Toronto when they qualified third, finished fourth. They're looking for better things today. Absolutely routine, and they're out quickly. Oh, almost contact as Tracy did get it into the pits. I'm sorry, it was Fittipaldi and Goodyear. Let's go to Jan Deekes.
Scott Goodyear has just left, Gary. He had supreme performance here in the pits. They got the 4 tires on. They got them fueled up. You're now looking at Mario Andretti, who came in a little bit sideways. Now he's trying to get out. Just misses his teammates' tires and underway.
I'll be very interested in seeing what the radar readouts are as Bobby Rahal and Al Unser Jr. came out, since they seem obsessed with keeping those speed limits so tightly here. It seemed like they were racing right to the end of the pits, and they might have gotten above it.
On the way out, they were okay. On the way in, you have to be careful because they're at this end of the pit lane. So really, they can almost accelerate as far as they want as the safety crew stick a rope onto Paul Tracy's championship dreams.
Rahal, the leader under yellow. Chicago White Sox tonight on ESPN. Well, there's been quite a bit of action here today. In the pit stops, a couple of little occurrences. Well, perhaps not so little if you're involved. As Al Unser Jr. came out, look at how he got together with Emerson Fittipaldi in his battle to try to catch and get around Rahal. Just a light touch. At the same time, Nigel Mansell had a problem coming out of the pits.
He got in, he got serviced, and he stalled the engine on the way out. They had to pull him back, so he has dropped down now to 10th place.
And Paul Tracy, they've been trying to get him back in. He's finally there, Jan?
Yes, they have towed him in, Paul, and they feel it might be the battery. They can change a battery on these cars very quickly. The crew has got the lid off. They're going to try and change the battery and check for anything else that it might be, because it did sound electrical. They did radio to Paul and say, check the battery voltage. So they do know ahead of time that that is what they're looking for. They also have telemetry. If the battery is what it is, Paul could get back up to speed.
Well, Paul Tracy has fallen 3 laps behind the race, though the presence of this full course yellow has helped him immensely. Here they were before the pit stops on the left and how they came out of the pit stops. The Mansell situation is the key.
And we mentioned on street circuits, when it's so tight, races can be won or lost in the pit lane. That hasn't happened, but you can see how Mansell suddenly loses 5 positions in one fell swoop of a stalled engine.
Ari Leyendyk, who came in here with some pretty good points, will leave with none. He's with Gary Gerald.
Ari was one of the victims early in this competition. It really was wild on that first lap. Everybody feared there might be problems. How did you see it from your cockpit?
Well, arriving at turn 1, the field basically came to a complete standstill going into that turn. And I was just basically sitting there waiting my turn to go around the corner. And I got hit from behind by Scott Brayton, who launched himself over me and landed on the front of my car. But he also at the same time pushed me into another car, which bent my suspension. So basically it was over then. I think it's kind of a chain reaction type thing that happened there. But it's too bad because I didn't really work up a sweat today.
I remember a couple of years ago, maybe the first year here, you had a problem, I think, on the opening lap down there sweeping through that first corner. It's not been good to you here in Vancouver.
No, but that time it was my own fault, and this time it wasn't, which, you know, it's just one of those days.
We look forward to seeing you at Mid-Ohio in a couple of weeks.
Thank you.
If he hasn't worked up a sweat, does that mean Chip Ganassi has to pay him for the day? They continue working on Paul Tracy's car. We continue to be under a full course yellow because Johnny Unser slowed down on the track in his 19 car. Still under a full course yellow, but anticipating a green. The story on Paul Tracy, Jan.
Paul is in. They're still working on it. The reason he's here, it was more than a battery, Paul. A burnt wire that goes to the alternator. They've rushed back to the transporter. They're going to try and replace it, but he's losing lots of time.
Yeah, he continues to fall behind. He's now 4 laps behind the lead of the race. Most of those under yellow. They're going to go to the green flag here, and then laps will begin to whirl away rather quickly for young Paul Tracy. Bobby Rahal is the leader. Al Unser Jr., you saw it when they came out of the pits. We thought we were going to have a chance to get a look at it, but we're going to run out of time. We'll take a look at the start of the race as Al Unser Jr. tucks in right behind Rahal and looks for a way to get around the outside. Rahal takes a more conventional line into the corner.
Remember last year when Al Jr. tried to make positions, he ran into Fittipaldi and almost turned himself upside down. Then he ran into the tire wall, and he still managed to finish.
Al Unser Jr. loves this track, has won here, and is feeling very racy this weekend. Of course, he's the center of a lot of rumors this weekend as to where he's going to go next year.
This is through the chicanes. This is through the tunnel, down to the second of the chicanes, the faster of them. 60 miles an hour they go through here. Breaking down to just below 50.
You're not going to ask me what those rumors are.
What are those rumors, Paul?
He's going to go everywhere. Name a team. He's probably going to go there.
Well,
that's the season. Look at little Al as he tried on the hairpin again to get inside of Rahal.
Was that Rahal again with that brake smoke? Did he lock up that right front again in that slippery braking zone? Well, if he did, Al Jr. will recognize that fact also and maybe use that as an attacking point. There he is, right behind him.
Yeah, Al doesn't have a brain. He's got a computer that just catalogs all that. Next time around, he'll say, I remember that. We'll just go over here.
You can see Scott Goodyear's also there right behind Al Unser Jr. Now, maybe fresh tires is what Goodyear needed. You see him here watching what the 2 boys ahead of him do, trying to hang on, trying to make a challenge.
And he's coming right on the pace with the front of the field. Behind him, just about a second back, is Stefan Johansson. There he is as he closes in with Raul Boisel just behind him, so the top 5 are still in close contact on the course.
Johansson went all the way from 11th on the grid to running 4th now, mainly because he had a great pit stop, but he did get some positions on the racetrack earlier. You see Tracy, the bottom right side of the picture, still in trouble in the pit lane.
Al Unser Jr. looks to the inside this time, decides instead to follow Rahal through.
Rahal has been mugged from behind before here. Remember Johansson last year? Down the inside, Rahal hit him and ended up smack into the tire barrier.
Well, that race changed the whole complexion of the points fight because Rahal left here with 0 points. Was furious with Johansson for engaging him that way. So Johansson was going for a position. In fact, that move finally got him a podium finish here.
Rahal now enjoys the full support and cooperation of Lola cars. Everything that Lola has in the development stage, Rahal gets it to try and make this car faster, to put Lola back at the head of the field. Why? Well, there's a major threat now to the championships because of Reynard's introduction to IndyCar racing next year. Now Lola want to spread their wings a little bit and help as many people be as competitive as possible.
You saw Paul Tracy on his way out of the pits after a 9-minute pit stop. They were at least able to get it refired. We'll see if it comes up to full speed. What about Scott Goodyear? His problems, his day. Here's Jan.
When we were talking about Scott Goodyear earlier, it was Derek that was talking about how hard it is to get traction here. And we speculated that those tires were getting hot and the rear tires were not getting grip. During that caution flag, they could talk to him by radio. It turns out that is exactly the problem. Now that he's on fresh tires, of course it will work for a while, but they have not made any chassis changes, meaning that once those tires get hot, he'll probably start dropping back again. Maybe next pit stop they can change the car.
But Derek, those tires went away pretty quickly. Is that something everybody else faces?
Believe it or not, this weekend here, it takes 3 to 5 laps to warm the tires properly. Then you get 2 to 3 laps at the optimum working temperature, but then they do tend to go off quickly. However, if the car isn't balanced properly and you have wheel spin, the tires go off very, very quickly.
We'll get a good measurement here on how Paul Tracy's doing because the leader of the race, Bobby Rahal, just came up and overhauled him, as did second place Al Unser Jr. Paul Tracy in the 12th car coming out of the pits 9 minutes behind the rest of the race and 8 laps now behind. Has quite a distance to make up, but it appears that the engine is now running properly, though Paul's spirit may be gone at the moment.
And he'd love to be in the middle of that fight and stay there, but realistically, Scott Goodyear, I'm sure, will get frustrated if Tracy stays there and if he thinks he's holding him up even a small bit, because look, well, you can see it even here now. Look how much Goodyear has lost to the leading two cars.
Of course, both Scott Goodyear and Paul Tracy are very, very popular in front of this Canadian crowd, and they're aware of the crowd here. It urges them on, but I think it also can have a negative impact. Goodyear around Tracy, continues his pursuit. Tracy runs all alone now and is no longer a factor in this race.
Former teammates here, Ray Hall and Al Jr. They didn't get on that well when they were teammates because they each wanted #1 status. I can understand that between professional drivers. Ray Hall took a little bit of time off before he got here. Arrived relaxed and freshened up. He and his wife Debbie took a short holiday in Jacksonville, Wyoming between races. He doesn't often get to do that during racing seasons.
Fighters at the front of the field. Al Unser Jr. has the fastest lap in the race now at 107.3 miles an hour. He turned that on the 21st lap when the car was getting very light on fuel. 33 laps are now complete, 102 laps the scheduled distance. Circuit's 10 turns, 1.64 miles around. Michael Andretti has won twice here. Al Unser Jr. once, the 3 previous years of this race.
I mentioned the Reynard chassis. The Minardi Formula One team have had representatives over here discussing the possibility of them building Indy cars for some teams over here. So Minardi also wants to produce an Indy car.
So the fight remains at the front of the field as Bobby Rahal tries to hold off Al Unser Jr. Scott Goodyear rides in third, followed by Stefan Johansson. Vancouver, the fight continues at the front of the field. You just saw the leaders pull through as we take a look at the rundown as it stood on lap 35 just 1 lap ago. And no changes have occurred in that 1 lap. You're watching Scott Goodyear as he tries to chase down first and second place Bobby Rahal and Al Unser Jr. But they just disappeared into the first corner, a full straightaway ahead of Goodyear. Stefan Johansson with a nice run in 4th place. The thing to keep in mind is the position of Emerson Fittipaldi. He runs right now in 6th place. He has been in an on-again, off-again fight with Teo Fabi. But the key here is he's in 6th place while Mansell is in 10th. And they are 1st and 2nd in the points fight for the PPG Cup right now.
Look at the traffic jam here. That's Dominic Dobson in the Galmer on the outside line. Moves to the outside, trying to let the leaders go through here. But here's Danny Sullivan following Mario Andretti. Danny Sullivan and Mario, some of the biggest names in IndyCar racing, running at the moment in 8th and 9th place.
It's a battle for 8th place as you're back at the front of the field for the moment. Al Unser Jr. continuing to worry Bobby Rahal and push him at every corner.
This Galmer Lola has enjoyed a lot of development from Galmer Engineering, headed up by Alan Mertens. They have different geometry on this car. They do have different underwings since the car started the season. So an ongoing development program that Galmer have undertaken themselves to make this car a little bit faster. It seems to be working.
11 cars on the leader lap. In 11th place, it's Jimmy Vasser. What about the points? How would they look if suddenly this season were to come to an end? Well, Emerson Fittipaldi still remains in 2nd. But his position is strengthened right now because he runs in front of Mansell. So Fittipaldi needs much more than just a finish in 6th place. He needs a couple of victories.